Hey there, friends. My name is Jeff Fritz, and we're talking about DEVintersection in Las Vegas this December with my friend Mads Torgersen. Hey, Mads, how you doing?
Hey there, Jeff. How are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm excited for this event, and you're going to be bringing to the event a whole lot of C sharp insight to this event. I feel like there's a lot more content this year in Las Vegas than we've seen in other years at other events.
Yeah, I mean we have a track called the C Sharp track. So there's both a .NET track and a C Sharp track. Folks interested in C Sharp and .NET will be busy this year, trying to decide where to go next because there's going to be a lot of stuff.
It feels like the right time to kind of revisit what we know and what we've done with C sharp because we've got C sharp 10 coming out now, right?
Yeah, it's almost like some sort of an anniversary. It's a significant number. So there's going to be a lot of content. I'll be doing both sort of like a here and now talk about what's in C Sharp 10 and sort of the near future thinking around C Sharp in general, and then sort of celebrating the journey, if you will, with a more of a retrospective talk about the ways that functional programming have gradually influenced C Sharp over time.
That's an interesting topic to me because when I think back to when I first learned C sharp back in 2004, 2005, and it was all object oriented, the language has really grown and changed and enabled new ways to think about programming in the last few years.
Yes, and that is very much a result of, so of course, both developments in the programming language landscape in general, but more so, I think, changes in what we are doing when we're programming. Like, what are the problems that we're solving? When C Sharp started out, there were no smartphones, there was no cloud, Yeah. And the main thing people would be building would be things like desktop apps in Windows. And object-oriented programming is great for that. And the things we put in there, we're very much aligned around that. And as the problems change, we need to think about how best to embrace them. And it's turned out that in not all, but many of these situations, the functional language tradition has been a great guide. It had good solutions to offer to things that were harder to do from the sort of traditional object-oriented perspective. And so we've been very conscious of that for a long time, and happy to try to marry the two traditions. It's been very important for us to not devaluate the original object-oriented spirit of C Sharp, but to try to bring things in a way that fit and make the language grow as a whole, rather than adding another island for people to live on, if you will.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense. And when I think about, like you were saying, some of those newer types of applications and programs that I need to write, whether it's web services or a progressive web app or building things that run on WebAssembly, there's definitely new structures there that make it easier for me to get involved there. And when I look at some of the content that we have for the event coming up, my goodness, not just learning about C sharp 10 and functional capabilities, but learning about analyzers and generating code and some of these other things. There's a lot that C sharp developers can do now with just the language.
That's true. And it's our ambition to keep being a great language, one that you would choose for a new project for most of these tasks. I mean, there are things in the, there are areas that we don't really chase yet, at least in terms of very low level programming, but and a few other places. But generally, we want C Sharp to take its multi-purposeness seriously, general purposeness.
Oh, yeah. And when we talk to customers, we talk to developers in the field, and we show them that C sharp and .NET helps you build everything from IoT devices all the way up to the cloud and everything in between. It's kind of eye-opening for folks.
Yeah, and I think we've been as surprised as anyone that this was possible. We had a bit of a lucky start, if you will, or prescient, depending on how you write history. Where C#, unlike some of the languages at the same level of abstraction at the time, C# put more effort into reaching down to more towards the lower levels, if you will, to ensure that you could have good performance, good interrupt. We did it very much through unsafe code at the time, but we've always had sort of a lower layer of the language, a lower abstraction level that was accessible, that most people wouldn't use. But if you were a critical component that others relied on, you could open that box, and then you had tools to improve performance and work on fewer resources, if you will. And that and we've evolved that to be a much safer lower layer, if you will, than it used to be. There are a lot of safe alternatives to unsafe programming now in C#, but we've kept that breadth of depth, if you will, across the different layers of abstraction. And that's been a big part of why C# has been suitable for that vast difference in scale of things that you mentioned.
Oh my gosh. And the way you're describing that, how we can open up things and still tap in and get lower level optimizations. You get me thinking about things like memory of T and span of T, those types of very performance focused capabilities. And it leads me to think about nullability and some of the other really tools and technologies in the language that help to drive us towards being more successful in developing more performant applications with less code.
Yeah, there's definitely that. And now you bring up nullable. Nullable is sort of part of that same trend as the span features and so on, in that it's trying to help you be safer. There are safer ways of doing the same things than they used to be. As technology evolves, as we get smarter, as somewhere in the programming language landscape, sometimes it's us, sometimes it's someone else, come up with great new ideas. We try to incorporate those in a way that are a good fit. In the case of nullable, we had to spend a lot of time putting our own spin on it, and it's very unusual. It's a very unusual spin for sort of the object-oriented category of languages. Functional languages have their own take on it, but it very much relies on data structures that are acyclic and immutable, typically, for their take to work. So we kind of had to find a good middle ground that is useful even in a mutable imperative setting.
Very cool. All right. Now, when I look at the schedule, there's one panel discussion in here that really sticks out for me, and it looks like it's you, Kathleen Dollard, Jason Bach, and James Clancy being hosted by Richard Campbell, talking about all things modern language and how they kind of fit together here. That sounds like a pretty good group to be discussing and talking to about these types of topics.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. That's going to be so much fun. And luckily we're covering both the .NET and the C# track here, so everyone who's interested in that area of technology should be there. It should be a great audience, and I also just can't wait to be on the spot like that, being on a stage with an audience asking questions, and it's just going to be wonderful.
Oh my gosh. And speaking of being in person with an audience, I feel like that's something that for us as speakers, as folks from Microsoft, we crave, we really enjoy talking to customers, especially in person. Can you speak a little bit towards what you're looking forward to when you get to see some of the folks in Las Vegas?
Yeah, well, I have to say, first of all, I think we've done much better during the previous year and a half plus than I thought we would have. We've invented new ways of getting together and getting feedback and so on. And in some ways, it's become more disciplined and more democratized, if you will, by the fact that everyone's the same distance away when you're on the internet. But that said, the interactions are not the same. The depth of interaction, the accidental interactions that happen in the hallway, and sort of just by proximity. That goes for events as well as for the workplace. That those have really been missing. My ability to get sort of almost like a subconscious sense of what's going on in the industry has been diminished by not just hanging out with people who are in the industry. There's just a sort of almost nonverbal exchange that happens continually when you are together with people for real. And I've been missing that so much. And this will be the first time I'm back.
Oh,
I'm doing a in-person event like this.
I'm right there with you. Getting back in person like this, those conversations that you hear in the hallway, that you run into folks and they're talking about something that you can kind of latch on to. Oh my gosh, I'm interested in that also. And suddenly networking happens and hey, let's connect and talk about something afterwards. Those connections that happen, whether it's at a booth or somewhere in the hallway or after a session, and somebody gets inspired and they share what they're doing. I'm with you. I miss that. I'm so looking forward to that. Events like this really help with that type of engagement. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that there are many parts of the world where this kind of thing isn't possible yet because of this terrible pandemic, and I almost feel a little guilty for starting to do this. And I just want to say we haven't forgotten about the rest of you. We're keeping the flame alive here, and as the world hopefully comes back to normal, I look forward to being able to globally connect in person as well. But so far, this is a wonderful start of the return to normalcy.
First steps.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Mads. It's been great talking to you, and we look forward to seeing all of you in Las Vegas.
Thanks, Jeff.